Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of the Golden Years Retirement Community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show, we'll revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Ike Eisenman and Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Pop Culture Retro. I'm one of your hosts, Jonathan Rosen, along with the man you know best from his role as Keith Gideon on the 1979 Fantasy Island episode On the Other Side. Please help us welcome Ike Eisenman. Ike, how are you today?
I'm awesome. How are you?
Good. Well,
I always get a little scared when I hear your intros because I don't know where they're gonna go, but that's a good one. That's a good one.
Well, all right, we're going to do Forgotten Films. We haven't done one in a while.
Yeah.
I'm going to preface everything by saying that this was your choice to do, and
Yes.
you have a whole story. You were almost in this, right? I'll let you
Yes.
introduce this.
Yes.
So-
Well, let me introduce the film and then I'll sort of roll into it because I'll preface it by saying that it was like the only thing I've ever turned down, and thank God I did, because it was the best decision I ever made. And we'll get into the nightmare of that. Oh my God. Okay, good. Now I'm excited. I knew this was going to be fun to talk about. But anyway, It's called The Bluebird, and it's a film that came out in 1976. And let me just I'm going to run down the synopsis real quick first, and then we'll get into the rest of the stuff. So it's based on a Russian play, and it tells the fairy tale of these two peasant children who are led on a quest for the bluebird of happiness by the Queen of Light, who gives them a hat with a magic diamond that allows them to call forth the souls of all things, both living and inanimate. And on their journey, they're accompanied by this group of human personifications. One's a dog, a cat, water, literally flowing water as a person, sugar as a human, bread as a human personification, milk and fire. All right. Anyhow, they visit the kingdoms of the past and the future and the queendoms of night and luxury along this whole journey that this brother and sister go on. And at each place they absorb more wisdom, learn a little bit more about being human and what it means to be happy or unhappy or tragedy and all of this stuff. And then eventually at the end of their journey, they end up back home, of course, where they discover that the bluebird, which they've been seeking this whole time, has been in their own backyard all along. So that's the upshot of it. And it has all of the earmarks of a good fairy tale without any of the qualities of a bad fairy tale. So the thing about this film,
I just want to say quickly, though, your explanation right now was a lot more coherent than the film. But go ahead.
Yes, I know. Even as I was saying, I was like, okay, well, it took a little while. I had to pull from, some other synopses online just because I thought, man, I don't think I can sit down and write the synopsis because it was so, scattered and strange, and so many things in the story happen for absolutely no reason that you can put together. And even at the end, when you think, okay, all these themes are supposed to come together somehow, it's just about the flattest, most dull, unsatisfying ending I've ever seen in any fairy tale, period. But it was directed by George Cukor, who is, and I'm not, is it Cukor or Cukor? Yes. It is. I mean, it's like he's the director of like the 1956 version of A Star Is Born and My Fair Lady and A Philadelphia Story, and I mean all of these amazing movies. And
well, look at the cast.
Yes, we got Elizabeth Taylor. She's like the main star.
Yes.
She plays the children. She plays like three or four characters where she plays the children's mother. Then she plays a witch that appears at the beginning out of nowhere for no reason, who then turns into the human personification of light, which becomes the guide for the children on their journey into the nightmare kingdoms that they visit. And then there's Jane Fonda. She represents Night. Cicely Tyson plays the human version of the cat. Then Will Geer shows up in the beginning as their dead grandfather who's lost in their memory, and their grandfather and grandmother only wake up and experience their afterlife when the children think of them, which is not often enough, apparently, because they're sleeping all the time, mostly. And yet I found that section a bit fascinating.
Ava Gardner. I mean,
yeah, and Ava Gardner, who is the personification of luxury, the human not frailty, failing of luxury in this very weird space that kind of looked like a circus tent and a banquet room, and all these characters representing these different aspects of, oh God, it was just aspects of wealth, ignorance, whatever. So those are the main stars, and the two children are played by Todd Lookinland, yes, and then Patty Kensett plays his sister. So here's the deal. All that being said, not long after, and I've been trying to figure out the chronology of this because it's always tough for people to not understand, but when you work these things out, this film was released in 1976. Escape to Witch Mountain was released in March of 1975. I shot Witch Mountain in April, May of 1974. So there's always a big lead time before a film comes out. And what I cannot remember is if Escape to Witch Mountain had come out, I feel like it must have, because I get this sudden offer for this role in this film called The Bluebird. And I'm all excited. It was a flat out offer. I did not have to audition. I didn't have to read or anything.
Did you know the cast when you made the offer?
Yes.
Didn't know the cast.
Yes. I didn't remember what the whole cast was, but I remember my agent saying, okay, here's the deal. You really need to think about this. They would love for you to play this role. But the thing is, this is going to be a co-production between the United States and the Soviet Union. And that's the first thing we hear. It's all going to be shot in Soviet, in Russia. It's like we get Russia, Soviet Union all blended together, but the whole thing's going to be shot in Moscow and Leningrad. But here are the stars. They've got Elizabeth Taylor, Jane Fonda, and they're rattling off all these names. And I'm sitting here going, oh, wow. On the one hand, it sounded like something incredibly fascinating to be a part of. And then on the other hand, I'm 12 years old, and the Soviet Union is looming so large as this horrific, terror-laden part of the world that no one should go to, let alone want to go to, let alone work in. And I was extremely nervous at the idea. But anyway, my agent said, look, the part is yours. Take a couple of days, think about it, and then let me know what you want to do. So my parents and I started to research this and started asking other people, because we had enough friends and producers and in the business that we could talk to people and find out what they thought. And one of the first people I spoke to was one of my dearest set teachers, Irene Burke. I worked with her on several Gunsmokes, and she was the set teacher on Escape to Witch Mountain. Very sweet, incredibly knowledgeable, educated woman. And she went, I don't know. I mean, how long do you think you're going to be there? And I actually have some sense memory that she had been approached to be the set teacher for it and may have turned it down, or maybe was considering it. I don't know, because she's very prominent in her field at the time. But she said, here's the problem. You are probably not going to be able to take all of your school books into the country. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she said, every single person's luggage that goes into the Soviet Union is held and searched. It's all opened up and searched. Doesn't matter if there's a lock on it. They will cut it open with a knife and examine everything that's in it. And anything they find questionable or they don't want in the country, they'll simply take it and they won't tell you. Then they give you your damaged luggage back, and you've got to deal with that. And school was very important to me. I have to say, I never wanted to get behind. And I, wasn't sure, the shooting schedule was supposed to be something like 2 months or something like that. And I'm thinking, okay, going to be in the Soviet Union for 2 months, may not have all my schoolwork, might not even be able to bring my lessons in. Who knows what they're going to take? And I thought, man, I wouldn't even know how to catch up with all that at that point. So then we have other friends who are saying, well, Elizabeth Taylor, she had developed a reputation by that point of being not only difficult, but completely just irresponsible. She wouldn't show up for filming sometimes.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes days or weeks at a time. She'd show up when she wanted to, and everyone had to jump in and go to work. And then they also said, well, Jane Fonda is another, she's another potential powder keg there. So you got to think about that. More than likely, this thing's going to go way long and over schedule and over.
Oh, they did tell you that. They warned you about that?
Oh yeah. 100%. They said primarily because of Elizabeth Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
And so this thing was actually already, because of the state of production it was in, or it was getting close to going into production, it was all over the trades. So we're reading all the rumors about what's going on in this.
Wow.
And I just got everything I heard. I got scared. I got nervous. I said, I don't think I want to do it. I don't want to be gone that long. And that was just no place I wanted to go. So I turned it down. And Todd Lookinland landed the part. And sure enough, man, everything everybody said was right. Our instincts were right. Production didn't start for a month because Elizabeth Taylor had not shown up.
Oh my God.
And now what you had there, and all of this stuff was coming out in the trades on a weekly basis, what was going on with this production. It was absolutely the biggest, most disastrous train wreck of a production that ever got actually finished. Next to Heaven's Gate, this film got finished because half the crew was American, half the crew was Russian speaking. No one could communicate with each other. The American crew showed up. All the camera equipment was decades old. The cinematographer had never shot a film in color before. And the sets, and we'll get into your impressions, but the sets looked like they were built by, like some community college, design program. They were horrible, absolutely horrible. And
did you see that story? But you said the sets were. Did you see that story by Cukor told about this?
No, I've seen a few stories, but I didn't see the one Cukor told. Cukor, it's Cukor, right?
Yeah, George Cukor. Cukor, yeah. I don't know how to pronounce it. But
I've never known.
He said that he told the crew there how honored he was to be able to, that he was recording on the same set as Battleship Potemkin was recorded on, and they said it's probably the same machinery.
Oh yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
Yes.
So now you've got that is already screwing things up, but Elizabeth Taylor is a month late to start shooting. So I could not even imagine sitting in Moscow, trying to figure out what to do for a month while we're waiting for the lead actress to show up. And then the living conditions were so bad. The weather was so horrible. All the Americans were miserable. And James Coco was originally cast to play the dog character. And he got a gallbladder infection because he couldn't eat the food. It was so horrible. He could only eat bread and butter, I think it was. And then he had to be replaced by another actor. So all the scenes he'd already shot had to be reshot. Then Elizabeth Taylor got dysentery and had it consistently throughout the shoot. And so that slowed things down. And then she was primarily the one, I believe, responsible for getting the cinematographer replaced because she saw the dailies of everything she had been shooting and it all looked horrible. And so she got the Russian guy fired and got an American cinematographer on board. And then they had to reshoot all of her scenes later in post-production. So quite literally, it was just the biggest nightmare one could possibly comprehend in a situation like this. But what's funny about this is one of the articles I read in moviemaker.com. They talked to Todd Lookinland about his experience, and he had a great time.
As a kid on the set, yes.
He had a great time. He said the movie's horrible, but he said he did end up having a good time. So I'm really glad he got to do it then, because he gets to carry those memories around. For me,
Right.
it would have been a nightmare. I would have been absolutely terrified and probably would have done a terrible job.
Well, I
So
want to ask now about that, because was there some part of you that, even knowing all this stuff, just thinking, hey, I get to work with Elizabeth Taylor and Jane Fonda, who's huge then too. Is there some part of you that thought maybe I should do this just to get to work with those people?
yeah, absolutely. Because you see those names and George Cukor, and you think,
Yeah.
I mean, it's My Fair Lady, for goodness sakes.
Mhm.
This is going to be a major production. They're going to turn this thing into something really potentially wonderful. So I felt a huge pang in my heart over having to say no, because I didn't like to say no. You know, my whole watchword for my career was I want to work. I don't want to not work. So when I get
Yeah.
offered work, I take the work. And it was a really tough call, and I just said I can't do it, because the other thing was going to happen is I was going to have to pay a set sitter to go with me, or my grandmother was going to have to go with me, because my mother couldn't leave the country for that long, and my
You'd have
father
to pay.
couldn't leave
The production doesn't pay for that for a child
oh
actor?
heck no.
Really?
No, not back then. No.
Oh my gosh!
No,
Wow.
I did. I had a paid set sitter that I started working with right after Witch Mountain. Because I started working so much. My father was my
Wow.
primary. He was my primary set sitter, my stage father,
I did not know
because he
this.
was an actor and he had the time. But then he had to, pay attention to his own career, because he was only half the breadwinner. He wasn't really the breadwinner in the household, but my mother had to work. So neither one of them could fly to the Soviet Union for 2 months, let alone the production ended up taking almost a year to shoot. So and it was a nightmare in terms of the time frame as well. But yeah, there was a huge pang, definitely.
Wow.
But once I heard the stories, I went, oh my God. And then the movie comes out. I didn't even go see it, because it had barely come out when absolutely every review was just like, oh good God, how do you put all these people together and end up with such a horrible movie?
When did you first see it then?
This last weekend.
Really? This is the first time you watched it ever?
First time. That's why I wanted to do this.
Wow.
I really wanted to do this because it's a movie that really film buffs should see. I think it has a historical relevance and a pop culture relevance, because you just want it, because the only way you can watch this movie, and I know you and I have agreed, we only bring up forgotten films that are available in some form. And for years I'd been trying to find the Bluebird on DVD or VHS or something, because there was a time period when I thought, man, I wonder what it was like. I should see it. And then I couldn't find anything. And then I gave up on it, because I think I didn't realize, I mean, YouTube has turned into such a monumentally valuable place for finding these things that they're not available commercially, whether it's old TV shows or old movies or whatever it is, obviously all kinds of things. But I just did I just said, what, I'm gonna check and see if it's on YouTube. And God, I couldn't believe it. There it was. And I thought, okay, well, now I can pick this as a forgotten films, because it is at least available on YouTube. And what's interesting is it's a Portuguese version, because it has Portuguese subtitles on it. Thankfully, it wasn't dubbed in. Well, they never would have spent the money to dub it in Portuguese. Just to be able to hear the performances, straight from the major movie stars' mouths that came out. And so I've never had a chance to see it. So I was definitely excited to sit down and see it. And then I realized I had to staple myself in my seat to keep from getting up and, going and, getting another glass of water or just standing outside for a while just to try to avoid it. And I thought, no, I got to finish this. I got to finish this. I got to finish this. So, okay. So I've been yammering for a good long time here. What was your impression?
I get what you're saying about going away, wanting fidgeting and going away, but this is like a train wreck movie to me. That's like you can't turn away. You keep watching. It was such a bizarre film. It was so bizarre, and the opening of it, I'm thinking this is like something from the 30s or 40s, and just the way the film was and the style to me. And it said, I thought this is like a Heidi movie or a Shirley Temple movie, and then I read it had been a Shirley Temple movie.
Was it? Yep, right, in 1940. Yep,
I never saw this Shirley Temple movie, and I did not know this ahead of time because I wanted to go in clean watching it. But when I read after it, yeah, it makes sense that it was a Shirley Temple movie because that's what it reminded me of watching it. It just everything was bizarre about it. I didn't even like. I even thought Elizabeth Taylor was phoning it in with a lot of her acting. It just seemed like she was just, oh, what's my line? And I'm just going to say it. No emotion behind it. Some of them, or just like, I'm going to say it in the most childish way possible. And then the people turned into, the animals turned into people. I mean, like kind of the personification of the animals was Cicely Tyson. What was it? George Cole, the other one? That was so creepy to me. It's just
it was beyond creepy to me, especially when the dog comes to life. And what's the first
thing? The dog is nuzzling with the kid.
Kissing him. I must kiss you. I must kiss you. And he starts to lick his neck, and I'm like going, oh, I could not have shot that scene. I could not have done it. I couldn't have done it. I couldn't have done it. Thank God it wasn't me. It was horrifying. It was horrifying. And he kept wanting, then he wanted to kiss everybody, and it was just like, oh my God. And you talk about at the very least, the costume design for the other characters. Remember, I'm going to remind everyone, because you're not seeing this. No one has this movie in their head, period. But believe me, pictures will be put up on the YouTube version of this, so you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. But these are human personifications of fire, water, sugar, milk, and bread. Right. And at least the costume designers came up with something interesting. Even Cicely Tyson's outfit was quite interesting. She looked like a human version of a cat. But the dog, it looked like a cheap dog suit. It was just.
It looked like they had the mask, the rope around.
The leather collar, and then the whole zipper up his back. It's like, are you kidding me? There were so many other ways they could have done it and still come across as the personality of a dog. And I will say, I absolutely loathe it every time dancers come out and do interpretive. I'm fire, I'm water, I can't stand that stuff. And yet these dancers actually, once I kind of got with it, and they're all, now that they're human, they're expressing themselves, the soul of fire and water and all that. I thought, you know what? This is not that horrible, but it was so uncomfortable to watch. And the sequence went on forever.
I was going to talk about that too, because this was a Russian film. This was Soviet. That's their form of entertainment for kids. The whole thing is just, you're watching a Russian film. To me, this was not intended for American kids. This was a Russian thing, what they thought what Russian kids would like or should like, let's give them the high, the culture of the ballet or whatever. It kept reminding of this as a Soviet film while watching it with those dancers there. There was no way around that to me.
I just don't know, unless it was just the power of George Cukor that was able to attract these movie stars. They obviously had enough of a budget to pay them. So I other than that, I can't fathom why they would want to do this. And I mean, it was just like, it was so.
They thought they were going to be making a classic for kids that would be last generations.
Yeah. I mean, and I always say that no one goes into a movie to make a bad movie. Everyone goes into it trying to do their very best job and make it a success. And you know, and yet bad new movies are churned out all the time. But on a scale of like movies that are disasters, this ranks so high in that pantheon. And literally the moviemaker.com article I was reading qualified it as a completely forgotten film because it was such a box office disaster that everyone
I never heard of it before you mentioned it. Never.
They just wiped their hands of it. Well, the only reason I would have mentioned it is because I had a connection to it. And I thought this will be a fun one to do, and you know, maybe a few people go check it out, because actually on YouTube it's been up there for 5 years, I think, and it's got like 55,000 views. So people are watching it. And there were a lot of comments in Portuguese on there, which I thought was quite interesting. Several people who said, you know, I've been trying to find this movie. Thanks for posting it. And you know, as always, every time I dislike something as much as I do, there's this smattering or handful of people that actually really like it. So you can never ever tell. So all I can say, I can say it's bad, but I always like to qualify and say I couldn't stand it rather than saying it's bad, because that's subjective and not objective.
It's not Shakes the Clown bad. I mean, it's not that.
Yeah, well, see, there you go. Again, where you and I differ. But I have to say something about Jane Fonda. This might have been rumor, it might not have been true, and I swear I thought I read about this either in Wikipedia, the Wikipedia page about the movie, or some other article. But apparently Jane Fonda was causing trouble on the set because she kept you did read it. Okay, so you found it. I couldn't find it again, but where she got in there and she was trying to like organize the Soviet cast crew members and tell them they should strike for better pay. And
that's not what I read. I read something different, but along those lines.
Well, it was that kind of stuff, and the other cast members had to go up to her and say, "Do you understand we're in the Soviet Union?" Right. I mean, you can't talk about that kind of stuff with these people. It's like you can't do that. And I guess she finally just let it go. But again, about her, I thought she was probably the only really interesting performer in the whole movie. I actually liked kind of how she portrayed the opening of her character. She actually did something with it. And then the whole sequence went nowhere, because I mean, she plays the queen of night, and she's protecting all the horrors, you know, in her queendom behind locked doors so that they won't get out and you know, harm humanity. And then I thought, well, you know what? She's actually doing something very interesting. And then it all just unraveled, you know, like a bad sweater. But yeah,
you like the part with Jane Fonda's character gets in front of the door, the lock, that when the kids are down in her kingdom, and she's like, "Don't go in there! Don't go in there! You can't!" And the kid said, "Oh, I want to." She says, "Okay."
Oh yeah. Oh no, that's why I said it just fell apart. I'm glad you quoted that, because it was just like, wait a minute. He's got the key. He doesn't need her permission. He can go do it anyway. And that's what he's supposed to do. Once he has the key, he can open all the doors. And his job is he's supposed to open all these doors to look for the bluebird, because that's all they're doing is looking for this bluebird. And I got to bounce back. I had to rewatch the part of the opening of the film, because I thought, this entire journey that these two kids go on is the most unmotivated thing I have ever heard of. There was no reason for them to need to go and find the bluebird until all of a sudden this old hag of a witch character just suddenly appears in their house and says she needs it. So she needs the kids to go find it, because a girl is sick and she's unhappy and she needs happiness. So you need to go out and find this bluebird for her and for me. And I thought, wow, man, talk about a shotgun start. Jeez. I couldn't believe it. And I had to watch it a second time because I couldn't even remember, why are they doing this? Yeah, you know?
I mean, going back to Jane Fonda.
No. Please jump in. It was just
going back to Jane Fonda part. That what I had read is that along similar lines, she kept talking to all the people, all the crew, about Karl Marx and talking, which I could see doing.
Oh, that's what. Yes, you know what? I stand corrected. That's what it was. Yeah.
and they all tell her, and that we're already communists.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
you don't have to convince anyone.
yeah.
And that they might. I read the same thing, that they had to tell her to knock it off because they were getting irritated by it.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's just
But
like,
the movie has no cohesiveness to me. It's just like what you just said. It's just scene to scene, and there's like no motivation. There's never really any threat. You don't feel any threat to the kids at all.
yeah,
Which there's no tension for that. It's just, let me hop to the next place that I have to be at. And as even it was comical when they try to give attention, and Cicely Tyson was putting her all into it. She was really like, overly so. She was putting
yeah.
her all into like trying to build up the tension, but she was the only one doing it. I thought, and it was comical. It was bizarre, and I agree with you. You have to watch this movie, not just for the historical aspect of it. I think you should see it just to see how bizarre this film is.
Yeah.
And by the way, the Shirley Temple movie, if you looked at that one, I went back and looked at all the things about that movie as well. It got panned. It got killed in reviews also. So they made a film of a movie. They made a remake of a movie that had already gotten killed the first time in reviews, and they just went ahead and did the same thing.
Well, it's been made 5 times apparently.
Right.
An animated version. It was originally a play. I thought it was at least based on an old fairy tale of some kind, but no, it was this play, and I didn't really read anything about the play, so I don't know if it must have been somehow successful in Russia. But like you said, culturally, there's, especially, I mean, storytelling is the root of all of this, right? And each culture has its own way of telling stories, and it's handed down for hundreds of years, and it carries over. And it doesn't cross over unless you're a real cinephile or somebody who is really interested in the stories of from other cultures, and what is fascinating to those cultures. I mean, I'm always fascinated by, still to this day, of movies that are flops in the United States but are huge hits in, like, Germany or in England or in Japan. I mean,
usually it's France. That's the one it's the huge hit in France.
Japan actually jumps on board a lot of movies that, it's like Bad News Bears. Now, Bad News Bears is a great fun movie. We love it. But the fact that it was such a huge phenomenon in Japan blew me away, and I didn't know anything about that until we did our show with, oh gosh, I forgot his name, who was in Bad News Bears. But anyway, that's always fascinating, and I think you're absolutely right. This was geared towards Russian fairy tale, Russian storytelling, Russian children, and yet there's not much information on how well it was received in the Soviet Union, or even if it got a chance to play, because
that I didn't see. That would be interesting to find out.
If it was
done, if it was like a big hit there or something. I have no doubt that would be interesting to take a look at.
Yeah. Because I think I did see the box office numbers. It did like 800,000 in the United States, which is kind of amazing, and 1.5 million worldwide. So,
by the way, it's David Pollock from
David Pollock. Yes. Thank you. But yeah, I mean, that extra $700,000 could have been Russia alone. But that it even made that much money in the United States is incredible. So but yeah, it's like finding these things is, yeah, you and I never would have known about it had I not had a personal connection to it.
But I couldn't watch it really without thinking of you doing that role now, because I knew that you had been offered that thing. That's what I thought I remembered.
Well, yeah, Todd Lookinland. I mean, if you look at him, he and I are so similar in our look. Yeah. We were both that blonde-haired, cute kid. And he did the best he could. This was, he did the best he could, and he I thought he did
I thought he showed like plenty of
no. I thought he did a very, very good job. It's just that it's the kind of, it was a kind of film, you know, where everyone suffered, and I'm not talking about just him or the girl, but everyone suffered because the film is shot in so many master shots with no coverage, no close-ups, no two shots, no close shots. So there was no opportunity to edit, to move things along, to cut to reactions. And you've got these actors standing around trying to decide, do I react to this? Do I not react to it? And they don't react to it. And then they do, and they sort of do. And then maybe they don't. And it's like, God, it looked like a high school production of a play, you know, the whole thing to me.
I also felt that the movie didn't know what it wanted to be.
Well, no, yeah,
because there was like some songs in there that they wanted to be a musical, but they didn't really go full into musical modes. So
yeah, it just, and train wreck's the best. It's such an overused term, but so accurate. It's just the train wreck that just never ended. It just never ended. It just kept going and going and going, and then you got this.
I hate the ending. By the way, you mentioned the ending that I hate endings like that. Well, the Bluebird was here all along.
Yes, I know. Well, you know, it's like that's the Wizard of Oz. I mean, really,
Right.
That's the thing about it. That is the crux of the Wizard of Oz. But now we're talking about an extremely well told story, you know, and a great movie. And you know, it is a character's journey to find themselves. I mean, you know,
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I forgot until you just mentioned that right now. Did you read anything on the Shirley Temple version?
no.
Okay, that's exactly what the Shirley Temple version was done. The Bluebird was done because of the Wizard of Oz. That's what I read last night, because they wanted their own fairy tale type thing. They even started it in black and white, like Wizard of Oz, and then went into color, trying to do the same exact thing. They thought this was going to be their big, huge musical hit with Shirley Temple, and they patterned it really after the Wizard of Oz. So that's exactly what they were going for. You just mentioned it, the Shirley Temple. So this was, you know, a remake of the Shirley Temple thing. It just didn't work. Oh, and the ending, besides that the Bluebird was here all along, spoiler, I'm sorry for everyone if you intend to watch it, that's the spoiler. But it was so creepy at the end too, when Todd Lookinland, you know, like, you know, just he grabbed that girl's hand and gave her the kiss. Like, it's just,
oh Jesus, I know there were so many inappropriate things, and I there's one I don't even want to mention because I just don't want people to go look for it. I mean, there was so much inappropriate representation of behavior that I thought, wow, I mean, God, really, what are the grown-ups in the room thinking? You know, they're just, yeah, it was, yeah, the kiss. It's like the whole point is to give this gift of the Bluebird to this sick girl so she is happy. Then all of a sudden she's happy because of the Bluebird, and then Todd, oh, that's what I think the kiss happened before he took it out of the cage. That was the other thing that was so bizarre. The brother and sister bring the Bluebird to the girl in a little cage that they're carrying. Okay, so she brightens up and she starts to become happy, and then she wants to lean in, and it really looks like she wants to kiss him on the mouth. And and then he backs away, and then his sister says, "Don't be shy.
Go for it.
You know, go for it." And then he looks back, and then leans over and kisses her on the cheek, and then she brightens up again, and then they go through this whole very weird thing where he opens the cage, takes the bird out, hands it to her so she can pet it, and then the Bluebird escapes and flies off into the air, and the girl wants to cry, and he says, "Don't cry. We'll spend the rest of our lives, you know, trying to catch it for you again." It's like, what? Are you kidding me? What? But God, it's just such a great example of how truly horrible something can be with the best of intentions, the very best of intentions. And there's no other way I can say it, because there are actually I think there's some visual things in it that I liked. You know, I liked the transitions between scenes with it. Huh?
When it said the end?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, well, I was thrilled at that because I thought, oh, good God, now I'll go get a cup of coffee. But they used like these paintings, these very stylized paintings that represented what the next character was going to be that was introduced, or the next scene that was going to be introduced. And instead of just cutting to it, they did kind of like a dissolve into that, and then a dissolve into the scene that the painting represented. And I thought, you know what, that's a pretty interesting device for a movie to keep the, you know, sort of the two-dimensional, I mean, physically two-dimensional, not story-wise, but physically two-dimensional aspect of, you know, a book, or reading a book with illustrations in it that you might be turning a page. I kind of sort of liked that treatment. So there's things in it that I gotta say, it's a little bit like, usually when I see a good movie that's got bad moments, you know, they really stand out. Those bad moments really stand out. And I thought this was a really bad movie that had good moments. So those good moments kind of jump out at you, but they're short-lived. They don't help add up to anything. But yeah, yeah.
So there are no regrets on your end not making this film.
Not a bit, not at all. And I'm even happier that Todd had a good experience, because I know I would have had a bad experience. Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden, and you can't anticipate these things. Who you know, who knew and who knows? I mean, he fondly, you know, he remembers, you know, trying to make heads or tails out of Leningrad because it was dark all the time and freezing cold. And it was very much a culture shock for everyone who went over there. But all in all, he enjoyed the adventure of being in the Soviet Union and making this movie, even though he admits it's a terrible film. So he got that. And I didn't give it to him. I denied myself. It was surely going to be a miserable experience, and he stepped in and got something out of it, and still fondly remembers working on it. And Todd Looking Land is another one of my peers from back in the day. He's 3 years younger than I am, I think. So we were never quite in the same age category, but I saw him on auditions all the time, and he worked a lot in the 70s. And had a very, very good career. So his career didn't suffer for doing this movie. And like I said, he remembers no one fondly. Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. That's a good thing. You know, it's like, oh, wow. Yeah.
Overall, I just, you know, before we wrap this up, I do think I agree with everything we said. I think people should see this movie, just as you said, the history of it. You know, it's all this great cast for one, but it's just you have to see this film to get a sense of what we're talking. I don't think anything we've said does it justice. What?
No, I can't. It's like I can't. I feel what I feel awkward about is describing these things in a movie that no one has ever seen. A lot of our forgotten films are movies that people have at least seen, might more likely have had experience with. Yeah. So they're just, you know, they have it in their heads in some way, and no one has seen this movie, especially, you know, except for the 55,000 Portuguese people on YouTube.
They're huge in Portugal. Huge.
Oh man, yeah, that's where it's huge, apparently. So yeah.
Well, let us know your thoughts. You know, if you go see it, please let us drop a comment afterwards if you like it, or if you think it's bizarre, or if you do love the movie, if you off chance that you do love it already. We'd love to hear from you about this. So I think, any other last word comments?
No, I'm done. I beat this horse to death. Yeah.
Well, this has been Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen with Ike Eisenman. And please, besides hitting that subscribe button, press like and ask for notifications. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast.